A 4-year-old street urchin finds a millionaire with Down syndrome being beaten by escaped convicts. But she saw everything and did something that shocked everyone. Rate my story from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The scream sliced through the humid afternoon air of the bustling metropolis like a razor. The 4-year-old girl, looking no older than 2 due to her frail condition, huddled deeper behind the dumpster where she scavenged for scraps. Her tattered clothes barely covered her skeletal frame, and her large eyes held a fear no child should know. For 3 days, she'd been lurking around the edges of a luxurious mansion, surviving on crumbs found in the wealthy's trash. Her pale skin bore the marks of hunger and neglect, while her dirty, matted hair fell across an angelic face, marred by pain. Every movement was calculated, every noise made her flinch. On the other side of the high wall surrounding the property, 3 burly men surrounded a young man in his 30s, the millionaire, owner of a fortune accumulated through stock market investments and Bitcoin ventures that generated millions, had fallen to the ground after the first blow. His movie star good looks were being destroyed by the aggressor's violent fists. The young entrepreneur had inherited an endless dollar fortune built by generations of his family through successful businesses. His special condition had never prevented him from managing his wealth with surprising intelligence, investing in funds and ventures that constantly multiplied his assets. But at that moment, all his capital couldn't protect him from the brutal violence he was suffering. "You thought you could rat us out and get away with it?" growled the largest of the 3, kicking the young businessman in the ribs. "Nobody messes with us and lives to tell the tale." The millionaire tried to shield himself with his arms, but his syndrome had always made him physically vulnerable. The men had escaped from the local correctional facility the previous dawn, and their first stop had been to settle scores with who they considered responsible for their initial detention. Their scowling faces showed scars from previous fights, and their fists were already stained with the helpless young man's blood. The girl watched everything through a crack in the wall, paralyzed by terror. She knew those faces, those harsh voices that haunted her nightmares ever since her mother disappeared. They were the same men who had threatened her family before the terrible accident that changed her life completely. Her breathing quickened when she recognized the biggest of them, the same one who had hit her mother weeks before the tragedy. "Please," the millionaire whispered between blows. "I never did anything to you." "Liar!" shouted another aggressor, stomping hard on the young man's arm. "Your security cameras filmed us that night. Because of you, we spent 6 months in jail." The second man was shorter, but compensated for his stature with a chilling cruelty. His calloused hands gripped the millionaire's neck, squeezing hard enough to leave him breathless. The third criminal, thin and jittery, constantly looked around, checking for witnesses. The little girl felt something burning in her thin chest. It was the same feeling she had when she saw her mother being threatened, when she wanted to scream, but her voice had disappeared forever after the trauma. For months, she hadn't been able to utter a single sound, communicating only through desperate gestures that few understood. Her cruel stepmother had thrown her out of the house right after the funeral, claiming she had no obligation to take care of a child who wasn't even her blood relative. Since then, the girl had roamed the streets of the metropolis, sleeping in dark alleys and surviving on the charity of strangers. Her fragile body withered with each passing day, and her soul closed itself off more and more from the world. But at that moment, seeing the handsome man being beaten by the same monsters who had destroyed her life, something different happened. An unknown force sprang from somewhere deep within her, a courage she didn't even know she possessed. Without thinking about the consequences, she jumped out of her hiding place and ran towards the criminals. "Stop! Stop hurting him!" she screamed with all the strength she could muster, her voice hoarse from months of disuse, echoing through the luxurious courtyard. The sound was like thunder in the afternoon silence. Her throat ached with the effort, but she kept shouting. waving her thin arms as if she could physically push the aggressors away. Tears streamed down her dirty face, mingling with the grime accumulated from days on the streets. The three criminals turned around, startled by the sudden appearance. The sight of the ghostly child emerging from nowhere caught them completely off guard. In the world of crime, children meant witnesses, and witnesses meant bigger problems than any personal revenge. "Crap, there's a brat here," murmured the first, looking nervously around. "Let's get out of here before someone shows up." "But we haven't finished the job," protested the second, still with his fists raised. "You want to get arrested again because of a kid? Let's go. The cops could show up any minute." The third man was already backing away, his natural paranoia screaming alarms in his mind. He knew that staying there would be a fatal mistake, especially with a child witness who could identify them later. The three fled quickly, jumping over the wall with surprising agility for men of their size and disappearing into the busy streets of the metropolis. Their heavy footsteps echoed for a few seconds before being lost in the constant noise of urban traffic. The millionaire remained on the ground for a few moments, breathing heavily and trying to process what had happened. Blood dripped from his broken nose, and his expensive clothes were torn in several places. When he raised his eyes, he saw the small figure trembling a few feet away from him. She was even more fragile than he had imagined when he had caught glimpses of her rummaging through the trash. Her hair was matted like abandoned birds' nests. Her clothes were dirtier than imaginable, looked like they had been retrieved from a landfill, and her bare feet were bleeding slightly on the rough concrete. But it was her eyes that struck him like lightning. There was a mixture of courage and despair in them that made his heart ache painfully. You saved me," he said, slowly getting up and wiping the blood from his lip with the back of his hand. "What's your name, little one?" The girl opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The effort of screaming to save him had exhausted all her vocal courage, as if her vocal cords had used all the energy stored in months of silence. She just stared at him with those huge eyes, and he realized that something was deeply wrong beyond the obvious malnutrition. "Are you alone?" he asked, taking a careful step towards her. The child recoiled instinctively, but didn't run away completely. "Are you hungry?" This time she nodded almost imperceptibly, a movement so subtle that he almost missed it. The millionaire felt an emotion he had never experienced before. All his life, people had treated him condescendingly because of his syndrome, as if he were incapable of taking care of himself, let alone someone else. Doctors, family members, and even employees always doubted his ability to make important decisions. But here was a child who desperately needed help, and for the first time in his existence, he felt truly needed. His wealth, his estate in goods and assets, his profitable investments, none of that mattered at that moment. What mattered was that a helpless girl had risked her own safety to save him. "Do you want to come with me?" "I have food inside," he offered, extending his hand gently. His voice was soft, filled with a genuine kindness that the girl hadn't heard in a long time. The little girl looked at the outstretched hand, then at the imposing mansion with its golden windows and perfectly manicured gardens, and finally at the kind eyes of the man she had just saved. There was something in that look that reassured her, a goodness that transcended any social mask or financial interest. Slowly, like a wounded animal testing trust, she extended her dirty little hand and touched his fingers. The contact was electric for both of them. She felt a protection she hadn't known for months, and he felt a responsibility that awakened an inner strength never before discovered. The millionaire smiled, ignoring the pain of his injuries. His fortune would finally have a purpose that went beyond profits and dividends. For the first time, his money would be used for something that really mattered. But as they walked slowly towards the house, a shadow watched everything from afar, hidden behind a parked car on the street. The cruel stepmother, who had thrown the girl out after her mother's passing, smiled maliciously. Her eyes gleamed with greed as she mentally calculated the financial possibilities of the situation. She had found a new source of income, and this time it would be much more profitable than any previous blackmail. The interior of the mansion was a completely different world from what the girl knew. Polished marble reflected the golden light from crystal chandeliers, while Persian rugs covered floors that shone like mirrors. She had never stepped into such a luxurious place, where each object seemed to be worth more than everything she had ever owned in her short life. The millionaire gently guided her through the main hall, watching as her large eyes widened at such opulence. Expensive paintings adorned the walls, and noble wood furniture created an environment that breathed wealth accumulated over generations. "You don't need to be afraid," he whispered, noticing how she cowered at every shadow. "You're safe now." The stern housekeeper appeared at the top of the marble staircase, her expression hardening instantly at the sight of the dirty child being brought into the house. At 60 years old, she had ruled the mansion with an iron fist for over 2 decades, and her first reaction was one of absolute horror. "Sir, what does this mean?" she asked, descending the steps with rigid steps. "Why did you bring this child into the house?" The millionaire straightened his shoulders, a new determination shining in his eyes. "She saved me from 3 men who were attacking me. She's staying here with us." The housekeeper looked at the visible injuries on her employer's face, then at the girl who could barely stand due to weakness. Her expression clearly showed that she considered the decision completely inappropriate. "Sir, with all due respect, you can't simply bring a street child into the house. There are procedures, documents, legal issues." "She was starving," he interrupted, his voice carrying a firmness that surprised even himself. "I'm not going to let her go back to the streets." The girl watched the discussion in silence, her small hand still clutching the millionaire's fingers. She could feel the older woman's hostility, a cold energy that made her want to hide even more. Her experiences on the street had taught her to quickly recognize who represented danger. The housekeeper sighed deeply, clearly displeased. "Very well, sir, but she needs a bath before she touches anything in this house, and clean clothes, and medical exams." The millionaire nodded, grateful that she hadn't completely refused. "Of course, prepare the blue guest room, and call the family doctor." As the housekeeper walked away, muttering about the madness of the situation, the young businessman knelt down to the girl's height. His injuries throbbed, but he ignored the pain completely. "Do you want to eat something?" he asked softly. "We have fruit, bread, milk, whatever you want." The little girl nodded timidly, and he led her to the spacious kitchen. The environment was impeccable, with state-of-the-art appliances and a central island where meals were prepared. The girl had never seen such a large kitchen. It was bigger than the entire shack where she lived with her mother. The millionaire opened the huge refrigerator, revealing shelves filled with fresh food. He took a red apple and offered it to her, watching as her little hands trembled as she held it. It was obvious that it had been days since her last proper meal. She bit into the fruit voraciously, juice running down her dirty chin. The sweet taste exploded in her mouth, and involuntary tears welled up in her eyes. It had been so long since she had eaten something so delicious, so fresh, so abundant. "Slowly," he said gently, "or you'll get sick." But hunger was stronger than prudence. The girl devoured the entire apple in a few minutes, then looked at him with an expression that mixed gratitude and a silent plea for more food. The millionaire smiled, cutting slices of fresh bread and spreading creamy butter. He also served a glass of warm milk, watching as she drank with desperate thirst. Each sip seemed to bring life back to her fragile body. It was at this moment that the first little twist was revealed. As the girl ate, she pointed to a pad of paper that was on the kitchen counter. With urgent gestures, she indicated that she wanted to write something. The millionaire took a pencil and placed the paper before her. To his absolute surprise, the girl began to write in perfect handwriting, forming complex words that demonstrated an intelligence far beyond her apparent age. "Thank you for saving me. I saw when they hurt you. They are bad. They hurt my mom too." He read the words with growing astonishment. A 4-year-old child who looked like she was 2 shouldn't be able to write with such precision and eloquence. There was something extraordinary about this little girl, something that transcended her fragile and traumatized appearance. "Did you learn to write with your mother?" he asked, his voice full of admiration. The girl nodded, her eyes filling with sadness. She picked up the pencil again and wrote, "Mum was very smart. She taught me many things before she went away forever." The millionaire's heart ached. He could feel the deep pain behind those simple words. His own experience with loss, although different, allowed him to recognize genuine suffering when he saw it. At that moment, the housekeeper returned with clean towels and children's clothes she had found in a donation closet. Her expression was still stern, but there was a slight softening in her eyes as she watched the child eating with such need. "The bath is ready," she announced, "and the doctor will arrive in an hour." The millionaire got up, extending his hand to the girl. "Let's get you all clean, okay? Then you can rest in a real bed." The little girl hesitated for a moment, looking around the luxurious kitchen as if she feared that everything would disappear if she blinked. Then, slowly, she placed her little hand in his again. As they went up the marble staircase, she stopped several times to observe the details of the house. Each painting, each decorative object, each reflection of light in the antique mirrors fascinated her. It was like stepping into a fairy tale, except that this time she wasn't just an observer, she was being invited to be part of the story. The blue guest room was larger than any space where she had ever slept. A king-size bed dominated the center of the room, covered with Egyptian cotton sheets that looked like golden clouds. Huge windows offered views of perfectly manicured gardens, where colorful flowers created a natural mosaic of beauty. The housekeeper opened the door to the adjacent bathroom, revealing a white marble bathtub large enough for 3 children. Steam rose from the warm water, scented with expensive soaps that filled the air with delicate fragrances. "I'll help you," said the older woman, her voice losing some of its previous rigidity. "Sir, perhaps it would be better for you to rest and take care of your own injuries." The millionaire nodded, but before leaving, he knelt down once more before the girl. "Don't be afraid," he said softly. "She will take good care of you, and when you're done, I'll be right here waiting." The little girl watched him leave, a mixture of panic and hope struggling in her chest. Part of her feared that he would change his mind, that he would throw her out like her stepmother had done. But another part, a part that had long been dormant, began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she had finally found someone who cared. The housekeeper closed the door gently, and for the first time in months, the girl wasn't alone by choice of someone who wanted to protect her. Not by abandonment or rejection, but on the outside of the mansion, hidden among the trees of the front garden, the cruel stepmother watched every movement through the illuminated windows. Her cell phone was already in her hands, dialing a number she hadn't used in weeks. A malicious smile spread across her face as the call was answered. "I found our little pest," she said in a low voice, "and this time she's in a house full of gold. Prepare the papers. We're going to be very rich." The bath completely transformed the girl. When the housekeeper finished drying her and dressing her in clean clothes, a completely different child emerged from the bathroom. Her hair, now clean and combed, turned out to be golden like rays of sunshine, and her skin, free of street grime, showed a delicate pallor that contrasted with large, crystal blue eyes. "My God," murmured the housekeeper, genuinely surprised. "You're a very pretty girl." The little girl shyly touched her own reflection in the mirror, as if she didn't recognize the child staring back at her. It had been so long since she had seen herself clean that she had forgotten what her true appearance was like. The children's clothes, a pink dress with small embroidered flowers, made her look like a porcelain doll. When they went down to find the millionaire, he was equally impressed. He was in the library applying ice to his injuries when they appeared at the door. His first thought was that a different child had emerged from nowhere. "You look beautiful," he said, smiling despite the pain in his swollen face. "Do you feel better?" The girl nodded and hurried to the table where there was paper and a pencil. She wrote quickly, "Thank you. I haven't felt clean in a long time. Can I stay here tonight?" The millionaire read the words and felt his heart clench. The desperate need for security that shone through in the question touched him deeply. "You can stay as long as you want," he replied. "This is your home now." Just then, the mansion's doorbell echoed through the corridors. The housekeeper went to answer it, returning moments later, accompanied by a middle-aged man wearing a dark suit. The family doctor had arrived to examine both the millionaire and the girl. The doctor first examined the young businessman's injuries, confirming that there were no serious fractures, only bruises and superficial cuts. Then he turned his attention to the child, who hid behind the millionaire when she saw the stranger approaching. "It's okay," the businessman reassured her. "He just wants to make sure you're healthy." The medical exam revealed the girl's deplorable condition. Severe malnutrition, signs of prolonged exposure to cold and dampness, small infected cuts on her feet, and a weight significantly below normal for her age. But what worried the doctor most was her absolute refusal to speak. "Severe psychological trauma," he diagnosed, speaking softly to the millionaire. "She probably witnessed something terrible. The muteness is a defense reaction of the mind." "She can write perfectly," the businessman informed him. "Complex words, elaborate sentences. She's very intelligent." The doctor nodded. "That's common in gifted children who have experienced trauma. The mind finds alternative ways to express itself. With proper care, time, and possibly therapy, she may recover her speech." After the doctor left, leaving prescriptions for vitamins and medications, the millionaire sat down next to the girl in the library. The walls were lined with expensive books, first editions, and rare volumes that represented a significant part of his cultural heritage. "Do you like books?" he asked, watching as she looked fascinated at the tall shelves. The little girl nodded energetically and picked up the paper to write. "Mum taught me to read. She said books are treasures that no one can steal from us." The millionaire smiled, touched by the simple but profound wisdom. "Your mother was very wise." "Would you like me to read something to you?" she wrote. "Can I choose?" "Of course." The girl got up and walked to one of the lower shelves, her small fingers running along the spines of the books until she stopped at a volume of illustrated children's stories. When she brought it to him, the millionaire realized that it was a book in English, far too advanced for an ordinary 4-year-old. But when he began to read, she followed every word, occasionally taking the pencil to correct his pronunciation through writing. It was evident that she perfectly understood the language, revealing a second small twist about her exceptional abilities. As they read together, the housekeeper watched from the door, her expression gradually softening. There was something touching about the scene. The young millionaire, with his face bruised but smiling genuinely, reading to a child who seemed to absorb every word as if it were water in the desert. It was then that the doorbell rang again, this time insistently. The housekeeper went to answer it, returning with a worried expression. "Sir, there's a woman at the door saying she's here to pick up the girl. She claims to be a relative." The millionaire's face paled, and the little girl dropped the book immediately. Her eyes filled with pure terror, and she began to tremble violently. She grabbed the paper with desperate hands and wrote, "No, it's the bad woman. She hurts me. Please don't let her take me." The businessman read the words and felt a fury growing in his chest. His characteristic stubborn determination emerged in full force. "Tell her I'll talk to her," he instructed the housekeeper, "but the girl stays here." The cruel stepmother waited at the entrance to the mansion, wearing clothes that tried to look respectable but failed to hide her greedy nature. At 45 years old, she had a face hardened by bitterness and eyes that constantly calculated opportunities for profit. "Where's the girl?" she asked when the millionaire appeared. "I'm legally responsible for her since her mother passed. You can't just kidnap her." The young businessman studied her carefully. There was something about her that made him feel nauseous, a predatory energy that reminded him of his nightmares about exploiters who had always tried to take advantage of his special condition. "The child was starving on the streets," he said firmly. "Where were you when she needed care?" The woman laughed with disdain. "She ran away from home because she's a troublemaker. She's always been difficult to control. But now that I know where she is, I've come to get her." "She's not going anywhere," declared the millionaire, his voice carrying an authority that surprised even himself. The stepmother's eyes gleamed with malice. "Oh, really? And who are you to decide? A rich guy with a mental problem thinking he can play daddy? I have documents that prove my legal guardianship." The mention of his syndrome as a mental problem hit the millionaire like a punch. It was exactly the kind of prejudice he had faced all his life, the assumption that his condition made him incapable or inferior. "Documents can be challenged," he replied, controlling his anger, "and care can be demonstrated. Where was she sleeping? What was she eating? Why was she wearing rags?" The stepmother hesitated for a moment, clearly not expecting resistance. "That's none of your business. She's coming with me now, or I'm calling the authorities." It was then that she revealed her true intention. "But I can be reasonable," she continued, a cruel smile spreading across her face. "A man of your financial position certainly understands that caring for a special child like her requires adequate compensation." The millionaire understood immediately. It wasn't about the girl's well-being, it was about money. His wealth, his investments, his estate in assets were exactly what she had come for. "How much?" he asked, his voice dangerously low. "Let's say 5,000 a month," she replied, her eyes gleaming with greed. "To ensure she's well cared for, of course." The millionaire felt a mixture of revolt and determination. He looked back, seeing the girl watching everything through the library window, her eyes full of fear and silent pleading. At that moment, he made a decision that would change everything. "No," he said firmly, "not a penny. If you have legal rights, exercise them through the courts, but that child isn't leaving this house until a judge rules otherwise." The stepmother's face twisted with rage. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "You think because you have money you can do what you want? I'm going to destroy your life, just as I'm going to recover what's mine." She turned and marched to her old car, but before getting in, she shouted loud enough for the neighbors to hear, "Kidnap her! He's holding a child against her will." As she drove away, the millionaire remained at the door, trembling with anger and determination. He knew that a war had begun, a battle that would test not only his wealth, but his ability to protect someone who truly mattered. When he returned to the library, he found the girl writing furiously. She handed him the paper. "She'll be back. She always comes back. She just wants your money. Please don't give me to her. I promise to be a good girl." The millionaire's heart broke as he read those words. He knelt down before her and held her small hands. "You're already a good girl," he said softly, "and I promise I won't let anyone hurt you ever again, no matter what happens." But as he spoke those brave words, a terrible doubt grew in his mind. He had money, but would it be enough against someone who clearly had no scruples? And more importantly, would he be strong enough to protect a child when he couldn't always protect himself? 3 days had passed since the confrontation with the cruel stepmother, and the routine in the mansion had completely transformed. The girl followed the millionaire through all the rooms like a silent shadow, fearing that he would disappear if she lost sight of him. Her nights were tormented by nightmares where voices screamed and hands dragged her away from safety. The millionaire, in turn, discovered a patience he never knew he possessed. His business meetings were cancelled, his investments in funds and ventures temporarily neglected. All his attention was focused on the small creature who had changed his life so radically. During the mornings, they had breakfast together in the spacious kitchen. The girl still ate with the voracity of someone who didn't know when the next meal would be, but gradually began to relax in the face of constant abundance. She wrote notes about everything, comments about the food, questions about the objects in the house, small observations that revealed a brilliant mind processing a completely new world. The stern housekeeper watched these interactions with growing curiosity. Initially resistant to the child's presence, she couldn't deny that there was something special happening. The employer, who had always been kind but distant, was becoming a completely different person, more confident, more determined, more alive. On the fourth morning, while the girl was drawing in the library, the first medium twist revealed itself unexpectedly. She had created a series of detailed drawings that at first glance seemed like just childish scribbles. But when the millionaire examined them more closely, he realized that they were precise maps. The first drawing showed the street where she used to live, with each house marked carefully. The second was a detailed map of the neighborhood where the mansion was located, including streets she should never know. But it was the third drawing that left him perplexed. An elaborate schematic of a commercial building in the city center, complete with entrances, exits, and even the location of security cameras. "Where did you see this building?" he asked, pointing to the most complex drawing. The girl picked up the pencil and wrote, "The bad men took Mom there sometimes. She was very scared after. They had meetings in the basement." The millionaire's heart raced. He recognized the building. It was the headquarters of a small construction company that had tried to buy some of his land months ago. Negotiations had failed when he discovered irregularities in the documents presented. He picked up his laptop and began researching information about the company. What he discovered left him even more worried. Several complaints of irregular practices, labor lawsuits filed mysteriously, and rumors of connections with illicit activities that were never proven. "Did your mother work for these people?" he asked gently. The girl shook her head and wrote, "No. She had a small clothing store, but they wanted her to sell. Mum didn't want to. Then they started going there every week." The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together in the millionaire's mind. The girl's mother had refused to sell her property to the construction company, and that had resulted in constant threats. The accident that took her mother away might not have been so accidental after all. At that moment, the housekeeper entered the library with a worried expression. "Sir, there's a call for you. The man said it's about urgent legal matters." The millionaire answered the phone with growing apprehension. The voice on the other end was rough and professional. "Good morning. I'm a lawyer representing the lady who came to pick up the child a few days ago. My client is preparing a lawsuit for kidnapping and wrongful appropriation of a minor." "The child was abandoned on the streets," replied the millionaire, controlling his voice. "I saved her from a situation of neglect." "That's not for you to decide," retorted the lawyer. "You have until noon tomorrow to return the girl voluntarily, or you will face the legal consequences. And I must warn you that questioning the mental capacity of someone in your situation to care for a child will be very easy for any court." The line was cut abruptly, leaving the millionaire with a mixture of anger and terror. The veiled threat about his syndrome had been clear. They would use his condition against him in court. The girl watched his tense face and picked up the paper to write. "They called, didn't they? I heard the bad man's voice." He looked at her, surprised. "You know that voice?" She nodded and wrote, "He went to Mum's store too, always with papers. Mum cried after he left." A new understanding hit the millionaire. It wasn't just about the greedy stepmother. There was a larger network of people interested in silencing any connection with the death of the girl's mother. And now she was under his protection. making him also a target. That afternoon, while the girl was sleeping in her room, the millionaire made a call to his own lawyer. He explained the situation in detail, including his suspicions about the circumstances of the child's mother's death. "It's a complicated situation," admitted the lawyer. "Legally, they have arguments, but if your suspicions are correct about criminal activities, that changes everything. We need evidence. And what about my ability to take care of her? Will they use my syndrome against me?" There was a pause on the other end. "I won't lie. It may be an obstacle. But if we can prove neglect on the part of the alleged legal guardian and demonstrate that you are providing a safe and nurturing environment—" "Do whatever it takes," interrupted the millionaire. "My estate, my assets, everything is available to protect this child." That night, he barely slept. He walked through the corridors of the mansion, his footsteps echoing on the cold marble, thinking of all the ways his adversaries could use against him. His wealth, which had always been his protection, now seemed insufficient against people who respected neither laws nor morals. It was during one of these nighttime walks that he heard a sound coming from the girl's room. Small, muffled sobs that made his heart clench. He knocked gently on the door and entered, finding her sitting on the bed, hugging a pillow. "Nightmare?" he asked softly. She nodded and picked up the paper from the bedside table. "I dreamed they took me away, and you couldn't find me." The millionaire sat on the edge of the bed. "That's not going to happen, I promise." "But what if you're not strong enough?" she wrote, her tears smudging the page. "You're different, like me. People think different people can't take care of anything right." The girl's words hit him like lightning. She had perceived his syndrome and, instead of seeing it as a weakness, recognized it as something that connected them. Both were different in a world that constantly questioned their abilities. "Maybe we are different," he said, "but that doesn't make us weak. You saved my life when 3 adult men were hurting me. Wasn't that strength?" She considered his words and wrote, "I didn't think. I just didn't want them to hurt you." "Exactly. And I won't think twice before protecting you, no matter who tries to separate us." The next morning, the second medium twist revealed itself when the housekeeper made a disturbing discovery. She had found signs that someone had tried to enter the property during the night. Footprints in the garden, marks on one of the back windows, as if someone had tested the security of the house. "Sir, I think someone has been watching the mansion," she reported, visibly shaken. "The footprints lead to the girl's bedroom window." The millionaire felt a chill run down his spine. They weren't just facing legal threats. There were people willing to take more direct action. Immediately, he contacted a security company, hiring 24-hour surveillance and installing a more sophisticated alarm system. But it was during the installation of the security equipment that the third small twist emerged. One of the technicians, while examining the existing system, discovered that someone had hacked the old cameras. For weeks, unauthorized people had been watching every movement inside the mansion. "Whoever did this is a professional," explained the technician. "It's not amateur work, someone with resources and advanced technical knowledge." The millionaire understood that they weren't just dealing with a greedy stepmother and a corrupt lawyer. There was a larger organization involved, people with enough resources to hack security systems and hire professionals. That afternoon, while the new equipment was being installed, he sat with the girl in the library. She was drawing again, this time creating images of flowers and butterflies, something unusual in her habitually somber drawings. "Why are you drawing beautiful things today?" he asked. She wrote, "Because you make me feel like beautiful things can exist again. Before, I could only remember bad things." The millionaire smiled, touched by the profound simplicity of her words, but when he looked more closely at the drawing, he noticed something disturbing. Among the flowers and butterflies, almost hidden, there were faces, the same faces of the men who had assaulted him. "Do you still think about them?" he asked gently. She nodded and wrote, "They'll be back. People like them always come back." But this time, maybe you'll be ready." Her words carried an astonishingly mature wisdom. The girl had learned through suffering that predators rarely give up their prey easily. And now, both were in the sights of people who wouldn't hesitate to use any means necessary to achieve their goals. As the sun set over the mansion, now protected by modern cameras and motion sensors, a palpable tension hung in the air. The deadline given by the lawyer was approaching, and everyone knew that the next few hours would determine the future of the small family that had formed so unexpectedly. The millionaire looked at the girl who was dozing in his lap as he read to her, and knew he would face any enemy, spend every penny of his fortune, and risk everything he owned to keep this extraordinary child safe in his arms. The noon deadline came and went without anyone appearing to pick up the girl. The millionaire remained tense throughout the morning, expecting some kind of legal confrontation or a bailiff knocking at his door. But the silence was even more disturbing than any direct threat. The housekeeper noticed his anxiety and suggested that he and the girl spend the day in the mansion's garden, away from the windows where they could be observed. It was a sunny day, and the child had never played in such a large and safe space. Watching her run among the carefully cultivated flowers brought a momentary peace to the millionaire's heart. Her golden hair shone in the sunlight, and for the first time since he had met her, she seemed truly to be just a 4-year-old. Not a traumatized survivor, not a witness to crimes, just a girl discovering the simple joy of playing outdoors. It was when she bent down to examine a butterfly perched on a rose that the first disturbing discovery of the day happened. Among the branches of a rose bush, half hidden by the foliage, was a small electronic device, a miniature camera pointed towards the windows of the library. The millionaire called her discreetly and pointed to the object. The girl took the paper and pencil she always carried with her and wrote, "They've been watching us for a long time. There are more hidden." "How do you know?" he asked, surprised. She wrote, "When I lived on the streets, I learned to notice when I was being watched. Yesterday I saw a man with binoculars in the building across the street." The millionaire's blood ran cold. If she was right, they had not only hacked the internal system, they were under constant external surveillance. Every movement, every conversation, every plan was being monitored by people who remained in the shadows. Discreetly, they went back inside the house, where the millionaire immediately contacted the security company. A specialized team was sent to do a complete sweep of the property in search of spying devices. What they found was shocking. 7 miniature cameras hidden strategically throughout the gardens, 3 directional microphones installed near the main windows, and evidence that the surveillance had been going on for at least 2 months, long before the girl had even arrived at the mansion. "Sir," said the head of the security team, "this is professional-level surveillance. Whoever's doing this has significant resources and access to military-grade equipment." The revelation hit the millionaire like a punch. His businesses, his investments in stocks and funds, his private conversations, everything had been monitored for months. But why? What had he done to attract this level of attention? The answer came unexpectedly that afternoon through a call that would change everything. It was his personal accountant, responsible for managing his most sensitive assets and investments. "I need to see you urgently," said the man, his voice laden with nervousness. "I've discovered something about that construction company that tried to buy your land. It's much worse than we imagined." An hour later, the accountant was sitting in the library, spreading documents on the table while the girl played quietly in a corner, apparently oblivious but watching every movement with her intelligent eyes. "The construction company is just a front," explained the accountant. "Behind it is a network of shell corporations that has been laundering money for years. Your land isn't of interest for construction. It's located in strategic points for illegal operations." The millionaire studied the documents with growing horror. Maps showed that his properties formed a perfect corridor between the city's port and the main highways. Anyone controlling those areas would have ideal access to transport goods without arousing suspicion. "There's more," continued the accountant. "I discovered that your family is involved. Your uncle, who always questioned your ability to manage the inheritance, is receiving regular payments from these shell corporations." The second medium twist hit the millionaire like lightning. His own uncle, who had grown up questioning every decision he made because of his syndrome, was working with criminals to take control of his fortune and properties. "He's trying to have me declared mentally incompetent," murmured the millionaire, the pieces finally falling into place. "That's why the surveillance. That's why the threats about my ability to care for the girl." The little girl looked up from her drawings and walked over to them. She took a blank sheet of paper and drew quickly. An older man in an office, talking to the same criminals she had drawn before. In the lower corner she wrote, "The man who looks like you, but older." The millionaire looked at the drawing and felt the world spinning around him. "You saw my uncle meeting with these men?" She nodded and wrote, "At Mom's store. They talked about you. They said you were weak, and they were going to take your things." At that moment, the mansion's doorbell rang insistently. The housekeeper went to answer it, returning with an alarmed expression. "Sir, there are 2 officers at the door. They have a court order." The millionaire's heart leaped. The moment they had feared had arrived. He instructed the girl to go up to her room and stay there no matter what she heard. The officers presented the formal documents, a court order demanding that the child be immediately handed over to the competent authorities for assessment of her situation. The request had been made based on reports of kidnapping and questions about the millionaire's mental capacity to care for a minor. "Where is the child?" asked one of the officers. "Resting," replied the millionaire, stalling for time. "She has suffered severe trauma and is under medical care." "We have orders to take her now," insisted the officer. "Any resistance will be considered contempt of court." It was at that moment that the housekeeper did something unexpected. "The child is not here," she declared firmly. "She was taken for a medical consultation this morning and has not yet returned." The millionaire looked at her in surprise. The woman who had initially resisted the girl's presence was now lying to protect her. The officers became angry. "When she returns, she must be handed over immediately to the temporary shelter designated by the court. Any attempt to hide her will result in arrest." After they left, the millionaire turned to the housekeeper. "Why did you do that?" "Because I saw how she looks at you," replied the woman, her words laden with emotion. "Is the same look my daughter had before?" She stopped, unable to continue. "Your daughter? She passed away at 4 years old. A terrible illness. Since then, I've worked here trying to forget. But when I see this girl, I see a second chance. For her and for you." The third medium twist was revealed through this unexpected confession. The stern housekeeper was not just a rigid employee. She was a mother who had lost her own child and now saw in the orphan girl an opportunity for redemption. That night, they gathered in the library to develop a plan. The accountant had discovered more details about the family conspiracy. The housekeeper had become an unexpected ally, and the girl continued to reveal crucial information through her detailed drawings. "We need evidence that exposes the entire network," said the millionaire, "not just to protect the girl, but to unmask the people who destroyed her mother's life." The housekeeper nodded. "I know people who work in the courts. I can find out who's behind this court order." The accountant added, "And I can track the money flows. If we can prove financial corruption, that will discredit any legal proceedings." The girl wrote a message that surprised everyone. "I know where they keep the important papers. I can draw the way." The millionaire looked at her with a mixture of admiration and concern. "It's too dangerous. I won't allow you to take the risk," she wrote. "They underestimate me because I'm small and I don't talk, but I saw everything. I know where Mom hid the evidence before she left." The revelation left everyone in silence. The girl's mother had hidden evidence before her death, and her 4-year-old daughter knew exactly where to find it. "What kind of evidence?" asked the accountant. The girl drew quickly, documents, photographs, and something that looked like a small recorder. Underneath she wrote, "Mom recorded the conversations when they came to the store. She said that one day we would need the evidence." The silence that followed was charged with possibilities. If the girl was right, they had access to evidence that could dismantle the entire conspiracy. But obtaining it would mean putting the child in mortal danger. The millionaire looked at that little warrior who had changed his life completely. His wealth, his investments, his entire estate, none of it mattered if he couldn't protect her. But perhaps, just perhaps, she herself possessed the key to their mutual salvation. The decision to seek the evidence hidden by the girl's mother was made the following dawn. The millionaire knew that every hour of delay increased the risk of discovery by the criminals, but also understood that exposing the child would be unforgivable. The solution came through a plan carefully devised by the housekeeper. "Her mother's old store is in the neighborhood where I grew up," explained the older woman. "I know every street, every alley. If we're discreet and quick, we can get in and out without being noticed." The accountant had spent the night analyzing financial documents and had discovered something disturbing. The payments to the corrupt uncle came from a bank account registered in the name of the cruel stepmother. The connection between all the conspirators was becoming increasingly clear. "They're not just trying to steal your fortune," he explained to the millionaire. "They're building a legal case to declare you incompetent and take control of all your assets and investments." The girl watched the adults' conversations with intense attention. During the morning, she produced a series of new drawings that left everyone impressed with her precision. Detailed maps of her mother's old store, including a secret cellar that no one knew existed. "Mom made a hiding place under the floor," she wrote. "She put a loose board near the old sewing machine. The important things are in a metal box down there." The millionaire studied the drawings with growing admiration for the child's intelligence. Each detail was marked with mathematical precision: distances, obstacles, even the location of a back window that would allow discreet entry. "Are you sure you can guide us there without being seen?" he asked. The girl nodded and wrote, "I know how to hide. I lived on the streets for months." The housekeeper proposed a plan that would divide the risks. She and the girl would go first, checking if the area was secure, while the millionaire and the accountant would wait in a nearby location. If something went wrong, they had instructions to flee immediately. At 2 in the afternoon, when the traffic on the streets was at its peak, they departed in 2 different cars. The millionaire drove a common vehicle borrowed from an employee, avoiding his luxury cars that could attract attention. His accumulated fortune in bitcoins and stocks had never seemed so useless. At that moment, he needed invisibility, not ostentatious wealth. The neighborhood where the old store was located was a mix of simple houses and small businesses. The poverty contrasted drastically with the opulence of the mansion, reminding the millionaire of the difficult life the girl had faced before he met her. The girl's mother's store had remained closed since her passing. A "for rent" sign hung crookedly on the door, and the windows were covered with old newspapers. But as they approached the back of the establishment, the first complication arose. "There's someone inside," whispered the housekeeper, pointing to a faint light coming from a side window. The girl watched carefully and wrote, "It's him, the man who came to get money from Mom." Through the dirty window, they could see a male figure systematically searching the inside of the store. It was evident that they were not the only ones interested in what the girl's mother had left behind. The millionaire felt a mixture of anger and determination. "They got here first," he murmured. "They're looking for exactly the same evidence we are." "But they don't know about the hiding place," wrote the girl quickly. "Mom never told anyone. Only me." They watched for a few more minutes until the man left through the front door, clearly frustrated at not having found anything. He looked around suspiciously before getting into a dark car parked on the corner. "Now," said the housekeeper, guiding the girl to the back window she had indicated in the drawings. The entry was easier than they had expected. The window was poorly locked, and the housekeeper managed to open it without difficulty. The inside of the store was ransacked. Drawers open, furniture moved, papers scattered on the floor. It was obvious that someone had searched for something specific. The girl walked directly to an old sewing machine in the darkest corner of the store. She knelt down and began examining the floor around the heavy equipment. Her small hands quickly found a board slightly misaligned from the others. With the housekeeper's help, they lifted the board, revealing a small space dug into the concrete. Inside, exactly as the girl had described, was a sealed metal box. "We got it," whispered the housekeeper. But her joy was interrupted by the sound of footsteps on the street. The man had returned, this time accompanied by two others. Their loud voices echoed from outside as they discussed the need to search the store more thoroughly. "They're coming back," the housekeeper warned in panic. The girl took the box and hugged it against her chest. It was too heavy for her strength, but she refused to let it go. She wrote quickly, "There's another way out. Under the store. Mom showed me." They followed the child to a small door hidden behind fallen shelves. The door gave access to a narrow tunnel that connected the store to the neighboring building, an escape route that the mother had prepared for emergencies. Crawling through the tight space, carrying the precious box, they emerged into an abandoned warehouse 2 buildings away. The escape had been successful, but the first big twist was about to be revealed. When they reunited with the millionaire and the accountant at the agreed-upon location, the opening of the box revealed contents that exceeded all expectations. Detailed financial documents, photographs of secret meetings, forged contracts, and 3 small digital recorders containing hours of incriminating conversations. But it was the last item in the box that had the greatest impact. An official will, authenticated in court, where the girl's mother left a small rural property to her daughter, a property that was worth little individually, but was located exactly in the center of the transportation corridor that the criminals were trying to control. "That's why they wanted to get rid of her," murmured the accountant, studying the documents. "The girl is the legal heir to a property that can destroy their entire scheme." The housekeeper looked at the child with new understanding. "You're not just a witness. You're the key to dismantling the entire operation." The girl wrote, "Mom always said that this land was our protection, that one day I would understand why it was so important." The millionaire began reviewing the recorders, listening to fragments of conversations that confirmed his worst suspicions. His uncle was directly involved, planning to use the declaration of mental incompetence to take control not only of his fortune, but also to facilitate the forced acquisition of the girl's property. "We have enough evidence to destroy all of them," said the accountant with satisfaction. "Corruption, blackmail, document forgery, conspiracy." But the celebration was interrupted when the millionaire's phone rang. It was an unknown number, but when he answered, he immediately recognized the rough voice on the other end. "You made a serious mistake today," said the threatening voice. "We know you were at the store. We know you took something that doesn't belong to you." "How?" began the millionaire, but was interrupted. "Did you think we were amateurs? We have cameras scattered throughout the neighborhood. We saw you going in and out. Now you're going to return what you stole, or the girl will find out what happens to people who meddle where they weren't called." The call was cut off, leaving everyone in tense silence. The second big twist had just been revealed. They not only had the evidence, but the criminals knew exactly what had happened. "They saw us," said the housekeeper, her voice trembling. "Even being careful, they saw us." The girl picked up the paper and wrote something that chilled everyone's blood. "They always knew we'd be back. That's why they killed Mom. She tried to use the evidence, too." The silence that followed was charged with a terrible understanding. The girl's mother had not died in an accident. She had been eliminated when she tried to use the same evidence they now possessed. The millionaire looked at the brave child who had risked everything to help him achieve justice, his wealth, his assets, his entire estate in funds and investments. None of it mattered if he couldn't keep this extraordinary girl alive until they could use the evidence against their enemies. "Now we know the truth," he said, his voice filled with new determination. "But they also know that we know. The real war is just beginning." Night fell on the city as they planned their next move, knowing that every hour could be the difference between justice and tragedy. The evidence in their hands was powerful enough to dismantle an entire criminal network, but also dangerous enough to cost them their lives if not used correctly. That night at the mansion was the most nerve-wracking they had ever experienced. The millionaire hired additional security, but knew it wouldn't be enough against people who had eliminated the girl's mother without a trace. The evidence was secured in a special safe, but the feeling of dread hung over everyone like a dark cloud. The girl couldn't sleep. She stayed awake in her room, drawing compulsively. This time, her drawings depicted grim scenes, armed men surrounding the mansion, dark cars parked on nearby streets, menacing faces watching through the windows. "They're gearing up for something big," she scribbled when the millionaire came to check on her. "I can feel it. It's the same as when they hurt Mom." The young entrepreneur sat on the bed beside her, observing the detailed drawings. The precision with which she captured details that his adult eyes missed was astonishing. "How do you see these things? When you live in fear for too long, you learn to notice everything," she wrote. "Every different shadow, every strange sound, every person who shouldn't be there." The next morning, the situation took a drastic turn. The accountant arrived early with devastating news. Overnight, someone had broken into his offices and stolen all the documents related to the investigations into the construction company. "They took everything," he explained, visibly shaken. "Physical files, computers, even backups I kept at home. It was a professional job. They left no footprints, damaged nothing else, just took exactly what they needed." The millionaire grasped the gravity of the situation. Without the accountant's documents, the evidence in the girl's mother's box was their only legal protection. And now the criminals knew exactly what they possessed. The housekeeper entered the library with a worried expression. "Sir, there's a man at the door saying he's here to deliver a business proposal, but something about him makes me uneasy." Through the window, the millionaire observed the visitor. He was a middle-aged man, well-dressed, but with cold eyes that constantly scanned the surroundings of the property. Definitely not a typical businessman. "Don't let him in," he instructed. "Tell him I'm traveling." But the man didn't take the refusal lightly. "Tell your boss I represent people interested in making a deal that will benefit everyone, especially considering the legal difficulties he's facing with the child." The veiled threat was clear. The millionaire decided to confront the situation directly, but first instructed the girl to hide in the secret room they had prepared behind the library. The meeting took place on the front lawn, where the new security cameras would record everything. The man introduced himself as a representative of a conflict resolution firm, an obvious euphemism for criminal activities. "My clients are willing to forget recent misunderstandings," he said with a phony smile, "in exchange for a few documents that were mistakenly removed from their place of origin and the transfer of the child to people more suitable to care for her." "And if I refuse?" asked the millionaire, keeping his voice steady despite the fear. "That would be a very unwise decision, especially considering your uncle is preparing new legal documents questioning your mental capacity. With appropriate witnesses, of course." The fourth medium twist revealed itself through this direct threat. The corrupt uncle wasn't just collaborating with the criminals, he was preparing a final legal blow to declare the millionaire incompetent and assume full control of his fortune. "How long do I have to decide?" asked the millionaire. 24 hours. After that, further measures will be necessary." After the man left, an urgent meeting was called. The housekeeper revealed that she had recognized the visitor. It was the same man who had threatened other families in the neighborhood where she grew up, always followed by unexplained tragedies. "He doesn't make empty threats," she warned. "Where he appears, people disappear." The accountant added equally concerning information. "I found out through contacts that your uncle has called an emergency family meeting for tonight. Apparently, he's going to present evidence that you are mentally unstable and endangering a child." The girl, who had come out of her hiding place, wrote a question that surprised everyone. "Do you trust me enough to let me really help?" The millionaire looked at her with tenderness mixed with concern. "You've already helped us more than any adult could. I won't put you in more danger." "But I'm the only one they underestimate," she wrote. "And I know things you don't know." She grabbed a new sheet and quickly drew a detailed map. "The house where they meet every week. It's where they plan everything. If we can prove they're meeting there tonight." The drawing showed a secluded house on the outskirts of town, complete with the positions of the windows, entrances, and even where they parked the cars. The accuracy was impressive for someone who supposedly should never have been there. "How do you know this place?" asked the housekeeper. The girl wrote, "Mom took me there once, hidden in the car. She wanted to see who was trying to destroy our life. I memorized everything." The accountant studied the drawing with growing excitement. "If we can film the meeting, with the evidence we already have, we can prove the whole conspiracy." "It's too risky," protested the millionaire. "If we get caught, if we do nothing, they're going to destroy us anyway," replied the housekeeper. "At least this way we have a chance." The girl wrote, "I can get in without being seen. I'm small, I know how to hide. You can give me a small camera." "Absolutely not," said the millionaire firmly. "I won't allow you to take that risk." But the child picked up the paper again. "They killed Mom. Now they want to separate me from you. I won't let that happen. You are my family now." The simple but powerful words deeply touched everyone present. The girl wasn't just talking about revenge, she was fighting to protect the only family she had left. That afternoon, a plan was carefully drawn up. The girl would use a micro camera hidden in a brooch, while the millionaire and the others would remain in a nearby but secure position. If anything went wrong, she had instructions to run immediately. But as they prepared to leave, the phone in the mansion rang. The housekeeper answered and paled instantly. "Sir, it's for you. They say it's urgent." The voice on the other end was cold and calculating. "We know you're planning something. It would be wiser to accept our proposal peacefully." "How did you—" began the millionaire, but was interrupted. "You thought you could spy on us without us knowing. Change of plans. The family meeting will be right here in your mansion. In 2 hours, and the child will be present so everyone can see how you are manipulating her." The line was cut, leaving everyone in shock. The fifth medium twist had just revealed itself. The criminals not only knew of their plans, but had decided to force a direct confrontation in the mansion itself. "They're coming here," murmured the housekeeper. "They'll bring the corrupt uncle and probably bribed court officials." The millionaire looked at the girl, who was observing everything with an impressive calm for her 4 years. "I won't let them take you," he promised. She wrote, "Then we need to be ready. They think they're going to surprise us, but we're going to surprise them." 2 hours later, cars began to arrive at the entrance to the mansion. The millionaire's corrupt uncle emerged from a luxurious vehicle, accompanied by lawyers, court officials, and other men who clearly didn't belong in the legal system. The final battle for the girl's custody was about to begin, and this time there would be no place to retreat. The millionaire watched through the window as his enemies organized themselves at the entrance, knowing that the next few minutes would determine whether he could keep his makeshift family together or lose forever the child who had transformed his life. The girl held his hand tightly, and he felt a strength he never knew he possessed. Together they would face whatever was to come. The confrontation in the mansion's library was tense from the first moment. The millionaire's corrupt uncle entered with an air of superiority, flanked by two well-dressed lawyers and a court official who avoided direct eye contact. Behind them, two intimidating-looking men watched every move. "Dear nephew," said the uncle with false concern, "I came here because I care about your well-being, and especially the well-being of this poor child you kidnapped." The millionaire remained calm, the girl at his side holding his hand tightly. The housekeeper and the accountant were strategically positioned near the new security cameras, ensuring everything was recorded. "I didn't kidnap anyone," replied the millionaire. "I saved a child who was starving on the streets." One of the lawyers opened a folder full of documents. "We have here medical reports questioning your ability to make responsible decisions. Your Down syndrome, although you tried to hide it, clearly affects your judgment." The girl let go of the millionaire's hand and walked to the table where there was paper and pencils. She wrote something quickly and showed it to everyone. "He saved me when you left me to die in the street." The uncle laughed with disdain. "See? He even taught the child to lie for him. This is psychological manipulation of a minor." It was then that the girl did something that surprised everyone. For the first time in months, she opened her mouth and spoke, her voice weak but clear. "You killed my mother." The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone present turned to look at the small child who had broken her silence with a devastating accusation. The uncle regained his composure first. "The child is clearly traumatized and confused. This only confirms that she needs professional psychiatric care, not the fantasies of a mentally compromised man." But the girl continued to speak, each word coming out with difficulty but loaded with determination. "I saw you at Mom's store. I heard you threatening her, and I know about the dirty money." One of the intimidating men took a step forward, but the millionaire positioned himself protectively in front of the girl. "If you touch her, I'll scream so loud that all the neighbors will hear." The accountant chose this moment to intervene. Perhaps it would be interesting to hear what the child has to say. After all, she was an eyewitness to the events preceding her mother's death. The court official, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "The child needs to be removed from this situation. I have orders to take her to a temporary shelter while the legal situation is resolved." "Based on what?" asked the housekeeper, her voice filled with indignation. "This child is well cared for, well fed, safe, and clearly recovering from previous traumas." The uncle smiled maliciously. "Based on the fact that my nephew is clearly having a psychotic break. Look around. He's turned this house into a fortress, hired private security. He's living in constant paranoia." The sixth medium twist revealed itself when one of the lawyers presented documents that left everyone shocked. "We have here medical reports from 3 different psychiatrists confirming that the gentleman's mental state poses a danger to himself and to others." The millionaire took the documents with trembling hands. The reports were detailed, convincing, and completely false. They described consultations he had never had, symptoms he had never presented, and recommendations for immediate psychiatric hospitalization. "These reports are fraudulent," he protested. "I never consulted any of these doctors." "That's exactly what someone in denial would say," replied the uncle. "The family has decided that you need professional help, and the child needs to be removed from your disturbing influence." It was at this moment that the girl made a courageous decision. She ran to the safe where her mother's evidence was stored and entered the combination she had memorized when the millionaire opened it the night before. "Girl, step away from there!" ordered one of the intimidating men. But she had already removed one of the digital recorders and pressed the play button. The mother's voice filled the library, clear and accusatory. Meeting of March 15th. Present, the man who calls himself a businessman but smells of crime, the lawyer who forges documents, and the uncle of the young millionaire who wants to steal his nephew's inheritance. They are planning to use my property as a transportation point for illegal goods. The uncle's face paled visibly, but he tried to maintain his composure. Recordings can be easily faked these days. The recording continued. The corrupt uncle just confirmed that he will use false medical reports to declare his nephew incompetent. He said he has 3 bought psychiatrists ready to sign any document. The silence in the room was total. Even the lawyers seemed uncomfortable with what they were hearing. The girl exchanged the recorder for another, and her uncle's voice echoed through the mansion. The girl is a problem. If she grows up knowing about the property she inherited, it could complicate everything. Maybe it's better if she has the same fate as her mother. The housekeeper covered her mouth with her hands, horrified. The accountant began to take notes furiously, and the millionaire felt a rage grow in his chest like he had never experienced. "That's enough," said the court official, but now his trembling voice revealed nervousness. "These recordings have no legal value without proper authentication." The girl ran back to the safe and brought out an official document. "Mum's will," she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "She left the property to me, and there's a letter explaining why." The document was genuine, authenticated in a notary's office and with all legal formalities. But it was the attached letter that caused the greatest impact. Written by hand by the girl's mother, it detailed the entire conspiracy, including names, dates, and amounts of bribes. "My daughter," read the letter. "If you are reading this, it means something has happened to me. The people listed below killed your father when he found out about the money laundering scheme, and now they want our property to complete their illegal transportation corridor." The uncle tried to get up to leave, but the intimidating men blocked his path. The situation had reversed completely. Now he was the prisoner. "Where do you think you're going?" asked the housekeeper, positioning herself at the door. After hearing confessions of conspiracy and attempted murder, the accountant then revealed his last trump card. "During our investigation, we discovered that the court official present is also on the organization's payroll. His documents are as fake as the medical reports." The 7th medium twist exploded when the court official himself admitted his corruption. "Look, I just needed the money. I didn't know it involved murder." One of the lawyers tried to control the situation. "Even if some irregularities have occurred, this does not change the fact that the child needs adequate care." It was then that the girl revealed her last surprise. She had recorded the entire conversation of the confrontation using a small device that the millionaire didn't even know she possessed. "Now you are also recorded threatening a child," she said with a courage that impressed everyone present. The millionaire looked at the extraordinary girl who had transformed his life. In a few months, she had evolved from a traumatized and mute child to a little warrior capable of facing corrupt adults and winning. "The only person who's going to be removed from this house," he said with newfound authority, "is anyone who came here with criminal intentions." At that moment, sirens were heard outside. The housekeeper smiled. "I forgot to mention that I called the police when you arrived. The real authorities, not the bought ones." The corrupt uncle and his accomplices realized they were surrounded, both legally and physically. Years of planning and conspiracy were collapsing before a 4-year-old child who refused to be silenced. But as they waited for the police to arrive, the millionaire knew the danger was not over. People like those didn't give up easily. And now they had become mortal enemies of a criminal organization that didn't hesitate to eliminate obstacles. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The arrival of the police should have brought relief, but it brought an unexpected complication. The detective leading the operation kept looking at the men being arrested with an expression that the millionaire couldn't decipher. There was something too familiar in the way he greeted the corrupt uncle before handcuffing him. "Sir," the detective said to the millionaire, "we need everyone to come to the precinct for formal statements." "That includes the child." The girl hid behind the millionaire, her newfound confidence shaken by the presence of more authorities. She whispered, "He smells the same as the other bad men." The seemingly innocent comment made the millionaire pay closer attention. There really was something suspicious about the way the detective was conducting the arrest. Too protocol-driven, without the enthusiasm expected when dismantling a criminal conspiracy. The housekeeper approached discreetly. "Sir, I think we better not let the girl leave this house today. Something isn't right." The accountant, who had observed the entire police operation, agreed. "The evidence we have are copies. If something happens to us at the precinct—" "We can't refuse to cooperate," said the millionaire, but his voice revealed the same apprehension that everyone felt. It was then that the girl made a decision that surprised everyone. "I'll go," she said in a firm voice, "but only if you promise that we'll stay together." At the precinct, the situation grew even more suspicious. They were immediately separated. The millionaire taken to one room, the housekeeper to another, the accountant to a third, and the girl to a fourth room, where she was supposedly going to be interviewed by a specialized psychologist. The millionaire protested vehemently. "She's a traumatized child. She needs someone familiar by her side." "It's standard protocol," the detective responded coldly. "Children need to be interviewed separately to avoid external influence." For 2 hours, the millionaire remained alone in the interrogation room, his anxiety growing with each passing minute. His thoughts constantly returned to the girl, imagining what could be happening to her. When he was finally released, he discovered that the others had also finished their statements. But when he asked about the girl, he received a response that chilled him to the bone. "The child is still being evaluated," an officer informed him. "The psychologist has identified signs of severe psychological manipulation. She will be placed in protective custody until a full evaluation can be done." "Protective custody where?" asked the millionaire, feeling panic rise. "Confidential information to protect the minor." The eighth medium twist revealed itself in a devastating way. The criminal organization had infiltrated even the local police. And now they were using the legal system itself to legally kidnap the girl. The housekeeper erupted in fury. "You can't just take a child from a loving family without a proper court order." "We have a court order," the detective responded, showing documents that appeared to have been prepared in advance. "Signed by a competent judge based on the emergency psychological evaluation." The accountant quickly examined the papers. "These documents are dated yesterday. How can there be a psychological evaluation of something that happened today?" The detective ignored the question. "You are free to leave. The child will be safe in state care." But the millionaire didn't move. "I want to speak to the psychologist who evaluated her. I want to see the child. I have rights as a temporary guardian." "You have no rights whatsoever," replied the detective, his mask of cordiality finally slipping. "In fact, there is an investigation into your own actions. I suggest you hire a good lawyer." They were practically thrown out of the precinct, but not before the millionaire heard something that made him stop. A familiar scream echoed through the corridors. The girl's voice calling for him. "She's here," he whispered to the housekeeper. "They haven't taken her anywhere. They're lying." That night, an emergency meeting was called at the mansion. The accountant had discovered alarming information about the detective. He had substantial gambling debts that had been mysteriously paid off in recent months. "He's bought like everyone else," confirmed the accountant. "And worse, I found out that the judge who signed the order also has suspicious financial connections to shell companies." The housekeeper revealed that she had recognized the psychologist who supposedly evaluated the girl. "She's no psychologist at all. It's the cruel stepmother in a wig and different clothes." The revelation hit the millionaire like a punch to the gut. They used the stepmother herself to evaluate the girl? And no one at the precinct noticed. "Or they noticed and turned a blind eye," said the accountant bitterly. The millionaire walked to the window, observing the city lights spread out below. His fortune, accumulated through careful investments in stocks and diversified holdings, had never seemed so useless. All his wealth couldn't buy justice when the system itself was corrupt. "We need to get her out of there," he said finally. "No matter how. That would be kidnapping, warned the accountant. "If we get caught, and leaving her in their hands is what?" replied the housekeeper. "This child saved your life, saved all of us by exposing the truth. Now it's our turn to save her." It was then that they received an unexpected call. The voice on the other end was young, nervous, but determined. "You don't know me, but I work at the precinct. I saw what they did to the girl. It's not right." "Who is this?" asked the millionaire. "I'm an intern in the department. I overheard the entire conversation between the detective and the corrupt uncle. They plan to transfer the child tonight to a location where she will never be found again." The millionaire's blood ran cold. "Where to?" "A secluded farm owned by the construction company. They say she's going to have an accident during transport." The ninth medium twist exploded with full force. It wasn't just about legal custody. They planned to eliminate the girl, to permanently silence the only living witness to their crimes. "What time?" asked the housekeeper, already preparing for action. "Midnight. They'll use an unmarked van and a back route to avoid traffic cameras." "Why are you helping us?" questioned the accountant, still suspicious. "Because I have a daughter the same age. And because I joined the police to protect people, not to help criminals." After hanging up, they had less than 4 hours to plan a rescue that could cost them their lives. The millionaire contacted his most trusted security personnel, while the housekeeper prepared an escape route and the accountant organized evidence that would be automatically sent to federal authorities if anything went wrong. "We have one advantage," said the millionaire. "They don't expect us to know the plan. And we have one disadvantage," added the housekeeper. "If we fail, the girl dies, and we probably do too." At 11 o'clock, they were positioned on the route that the informant had indicated. The millionaire drove a borrowed dark car, while the security personnel waited in strategic positions. The plan was simple but risky. Intercept the van during transport and rescue the girl before she reached her final destination. At 11:50, an unmarked van appeared on the back road, exactly as predicted. Inside, through the dark windows, they could see a small figure sitting between two large men. "It's her," whispered the housekeeper. "My little warrior." The millionaire took a deep breath, thinking of all the moments he had spent with the girl, all the times she had surprised him with her courage and intelligence. Now it was his turn to be brave for her. "Let's bring her home," he said, accelerating the car toward the van. What none of them expected was that the girl, even in mortal danger, still had one last surprise in store. As the cars approached on the dark road, she was putting into practice a plan of her own that would once again show why she had survived so long on the streets. The chase on the dark road turned into something very different from what the millionaire had planned. When he approached the van, expecting a violent confrontation, it simply pulled over to the side of the road. The two large men calmly exited the vehicle, their hands empty and raised in surrender. "What's going on?" murmured the housekeeper, equally confused. The answer came when the girl jumped out of the van and ran towards their car, a triumphant smile on her small face. In her hands, she held a small electronic device that none of them had seen before. "How did you—" began the millionaire, but she interrupted him. "I learned to steal useful things when I lived on the street," she said, her voice more confident than ever. "This little gadget makes cars stop when you press the button." One of the men approached, his hands still raised. "The girl disabled our engine 15 miles back. We were forced to stop here." "And why didn't you try to hurt her?" asked the housekeeper, suspicious. The second man replied, "Because she told us something that changed everything, about who really told us to hire." The girl approached the millionaire. "They didn't know they were going to really hurt me. They thought it was just to take me to another place. When I told them about Mom, they got scared." The first man confirmed, "We were told it was a normal custody transfer. We didn't know about murder. We don't do that kind of job." The 10th medium twist revealed itself when the kidnappers themselves became unexpected allies. They had been hired by intermediaries who omitted the true nature of the work. "We have families too," explained the second man. "If we find out we're working for child killers, we stop immediately." The girl showed the electronic device she had used. "I took this from the detective's car when he wasn't looking. Mum taught me that sometimes people keep important things in places they think no one will look." The device wasn't just an engine disabler, it was a sophisticated GPS locator that showed all the positions of the criminal network in real time. The small screen displayed red dots scattered across the city, each representing a member of the organization. "My God," whispered the accountant, studying the device. "This is better than any evidence we've ever had. It shows their whole structure." The millionaire looked at the girl with a mixture of pride and concern. "You planned all this." "Not everything," she admitted, "but I learned that sometimes you need to pretend to be weaker than you really are. They underestimated me. One of the ex-kidnappers offered to help. We know the routes they use, the meeting points. If you want to dismantle the entire operation," the housekeeper interrupted, "first we need to make sure the girl is completely safe. Then we think about justice." It was then that the millionaire's phone rang. It was the informant from the precinct, his voice filled with panic. "You need to get out of the city right now. The detective found out that someone leaked information. He's coming after you with reinforcements." "How much time do we have?" asked the millionaire. 20 minutes, maybe less." The situation had drastically deteriorated. They couldn't go back to the mansion. They couldn't go to the precinct. And now they had evidence that could destroy an entire organization, but also made them priority targets. "I know a place," said one of the ex-kidnappers. "A rural inn. Owner is ex-cop honest. He don't like corruption." "Why should we trust you?" questioned the housekeeper. "Because," replied the man, looking at the girl, "my daughter is the same age as her, and if someone tried to hurt my girl, I would also want strangers to decide to do the right thing." During the trip to the inn, the girl revealed more details about how she had planned her own escape. "When they took me from the precinct, I heard them talking about the farm. I knew it wasn't a good place." "Then why didn't you scream for help?" asked the millionaire. "Because I learned that sometimes it's better to let the bad guys think they've won. Then they get careless." The wisdom of the 4-year-old continued to surprise all the adults around her. She had developed survival instincts that many adults would never possess. At the inn, the owner, a 60-year-old man with scars that told stories of an honest police career, received them without asking questions. "Any child in danger is welcome here," he said simply. As the girl finally rested in a safe room, the adults planned their next steps. The GPS device showed that the organization was mobilizing massively. All the red dots were converging on the area where they had intercepted the van. "They're desperate," observed the accountant. "This means the evidence we have is even more dangerous to them than we imagined." The housekeeper proposed a radical solution. "What if we send all the evidence to federal authorities simultaneously? Newspapers, prosecutors, the FBI, all at the same time?" "Risky," said the millionaire. "If some of them are also bought." "Then we do it differently," suggested one of the ex-kidnappers. "We know an investigative journalist who isn't afraid of anyone. If he publishes the story first, it's hard to bury." The girl appeared in the doorway of the room, obviously unable to sleep. "Can I help?" she asked. "You've already helped us more than any child should," replied the millionaire gently. "But I remembered something important," she insisted. "Mom gave me something before she left. She said that if one day I really needed help, this might be useful." She pulled out from inside her clothes a small medal that she had kept hidden throughout all these months. It wasn't just any medal. It had microscopic engravings on the edges and a nearly invisible phone number on the back. "Mum said this number was for someone who helped people like us," she explained. "People who fight against bad people but can't win alone." The millionaire examined the medal under a magnifying glass that the inn owner provided. The number was really there, engraved with surgical precision. "Your mother was much more prepared than we imagined." When they called the number, a female voice answered immediately. as if she was waiting for the call. "Finally," she said. "We've been waiting for you to get in touch for months." "Who is this?" asked the millionaire. "I am a federal agent specializing in organized crime. The girl's mother was our informant. She was collecting evidence for us when she was eliminated." The revelation struck everyone like lightning. The girl's mother hadn't just been a victim, she was a hero who risked and lost her life to expose the truth. "Do you have the evidence she collected?" asked the agent. "Yes," replied the accountant, "and much more." "Then it's time to finish what she started. But first, we need to get you out of there. We have identified suspicious movement converging on your area." As they waited for federal help to arrive, the girl sat next to the millionaire. "Are you sad?" she asked. "Why?" "Because we found out that Mom was fighting them for a long time, and that she died trying to protect us." The millionaire hugged the girl. "I'm proud of her." "And proud of you. You two are the bravest people I've ever known." "And now we're going to finish her fight?" asked the girl. "We will," he promised. "Together." But as they spoke, car lights appeared on the road leading to the inn. Many lights, and all heading directly towards them. The criminal organization had found their hiding place, and now they would face their final confrontation. But this time, they weren't alone. They had the truth, irrefutable evidence, and more importantly, they had each other. The girl held the millionaire's hand tightly. "I'm not scared anymore," she said, "because I know Mom is protecting us." And at that moment, the millionaire knew that regardless of what happened, they had become a true family, united not by blood, but by love, courage, and the determination to do what's right. The car lights approached the inn rapidly, but they weren't the criminals that everyone feared. They were federal vehicles, arriving exactly at the moment when the situation seemed hopeless. The agent who had spoken on the phone got out of the first car, accompanied by a full team of investigators. "We arrived just in time," she said, watching other cars arriving on the back road. "Those must be the criminals." The confrontation that followed was surprisingly peaceful. Surrounded by well-trained federal agents and with all the evidence already in the hands of the authorities, the criminal organization surrendered without resistance. The corrupt detective, the treacherous uncle, the cruel stepmother, and all their accomplices were arrested in a coordinated operation that had been planned for months. "The girl's mother provided us with crucial information before she was eliminated," explained the federal agent. "But we needed more evidence to ensure everyone was caught." The girl watched everything with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. "Mom did it," she whispered. "She beat the bad men." In the days that followed, the full truth was revealed. The construction company was just the tip of the iceberg of a money-laundering network that stretched across several cities. The girl's farm was indeed the centerpiece of the scheme, and her legal inheritance had been the last obstacle for the criminals. The millionaire discovered that his own fortune had been partially built through investments that, without his knowledge, benefited shell companies of the organization. His Down syndrome had been used as an excuse to keep him away from the more complex financial details, allowing the corrupt uncle to manipulate his assets. "I'm going to recover every penny that was stolen," he promised the girl, "and we're going to use that money to help other children like you." The first major twist revealed itself when they discovered that the organization had left a much larger trail than they imagined. Dozens of families had been threatened, several people eliminated, and countless properties acquired through coercion over the years. "You were the first to really fight back," said the federal agent. "And your courage saved many other families." The girl, now speaking normally and with growing confidence, asked a question that surprised everyone. "What's going to happen to me now?" It was the question that the millionaire feared, but that he knew would eventually come. Legally, he had no rights over the child, despite all the love they had developed. "Well," said the agent with a smile, "that depends on a few factors. The girl is the heir to a valuable property, but she is still a minor. She needs a legal guardian. The housekeeper stepped forward. "I would like to be considered. I lost my own daughter, and this girl brought light back into my life." The accountant also spoke up. "My wife and I have always wanted children. We could offer a stable home." But it was the girl who made the final decision. "I want to stay with my papa," she said, looking at the millionaire. "He saved me first. He loves me first, and I choose him." The millionaire felt tears stream down his face. "Are you sure? I'm different, remember? People will always question whether I can take good care of you." "You're different, just like I'm different," she replied with simplicity. "And different people take better care of each other." The federal agent smiled. "With the evidence we have about your exceptional behavior throughout this whole situation, and considering the child's clear choice, I think we can arrange something official." 3 months later, the adoption papers were finalized. The millionaire legally became the father of the bravest girl he had ever known, while the housekeeper officially took on the role of adored grandmother. The rural farm inherited by the girl was transformed into a support center for children who had experienced similar traumas. Part of the fortune recovered from the criminal scheme was invested in legitimate social programs. "Now we have a real family," said the girl during the adoption celebration. "We always have," replied the millionaire, hugging her. "We just needed the papers to make it official." And as they watched the mansion's garden, where everything had begun, now filled with other children playing and laughing, they both knew they had found something more valuable than any wealth: a home built with love, courage, and the certainty that true families are chosen, not born ready-made. 6 months after the official adoption, life at the mansion had found a rhythm of happiness that neither of them had ever imagined possible. The girl, now 5 years old, attended a special school for gifted children, where her exceptional intelligence finally received the proper recognition and encouragement. The millionaire had completely restructured his businesses, using his experience with investments to create ethical funds that benefited vulnerable communities. His assets in stocks and holdings now generated profits that were divided between supporting the family and social projects. "Papa," said the girl on a sunny morning, "the teacher wants to talk to you about something important." "Any trouble at school?" he asked, concerned. "It's not trouble. It's a good surprise," she replied with a mysterious smile. At school, the teacher revealed something extraordinary. "Your daughter has not only fully recovered from the trauma, but has developed impressive leadership skills. She organizes support groups for other children who have gone through difficulties." The girl had created a system where older children helped younger ones cope with fears and traumas. Her drawings, which previously depicted only suffering, were now used as therapeutic tools for other children to express themselves. "She told me she learned from you that different people can take better care of each other," continued the teacher. "And she's applying that philosophy to help her classmates." On the way back home, the girl asked a question that deeply touched the millionaire's heart. "Papa, do you think Mum would be proud of us?" "I'm sure she would," he replied, hugging her. "You've become exactly the courageous and kind person she wanted you to be. And you've become the papa she wanted me to have," she said simply. That afternoon, they received an unexpected visit. The federal agent who had helped them arrived with news about the criminal's trial. Everyone had been sentenced to long prison terms, and the corruption network had been completely dismantled. "There's something else," said the agent. "During the investigations, we discovered that the girl's mother left a secret bank account with substantial savings. The money now legally belongs to you." The amount was considerable, enough to ensure the girl's higher education and much more. But it was the letter accompanying the inheritance that really moved them both. "My dear daughter," read the mother's letter, "if you are reading this, it means you have found someone who loves you enough to fight for you. Use this money, not only for your happiness, but to help other children who are going through what we went through. And remember, you are stronger than anything bad that can happen." The girl was silent for a long moment after reading. Then she looked at the millionaire with a determination he recognized immediately, the same expression she had when she saved his life. "I want to use Mom's money to do the same thing you did for me," she said. "Save other children who need a family." And so was born the project that would change their lives once again. Using the mother's inheritance, the millionaire's ethical fortune, and the rural farm that the girl had inherited, they created a foundation dedicated to connecting orphan children or abandoned children with loving families. The housekeeper became the administrative director, using her experience and maternal instinct to identify the best matches between children and adoptive families. The former accountant became the foundation's financial consultant, ensuring that resources were used efficiently and transparently. "You know what's most amazing?" said the housekeeper during the foundation's official opening. "You started as two wounded people trying to heal, and ended up creating a place where hundreds of people can find healing." The girl cut the inauguration ribbon with golden scissors, her radiant smile captured by dozens of photographers. But the most special moment was when she whispered to the millionaire, "Now we are a family that helps other families to exist." That night at home, they sat in the garden where everything had begun. The girl was drawing while the millionaire reviewed financial reports from the foundation. It was a scene of domestic peace that both had learned to value deeply. "Papa," said she, looking up from the drawing, "do you remember when you found me on the street?" "How could I forget? It was the most important day of my life." "Mine too, but you know what I found out?" "What?" "We didn't meet by chance. Mom was guiding us to each other from the beginning." The millionaire looked at the drawing she was making. A happy family surrounded by many other happy families, all connected by golden lines that seemed to come from the sky. "You're right," he said, kissing her forehead. "Your mother knew exactly what she was doing." And as the stars shone over the mansion that had become a true home, father and daughter knew that their story was just the beginning of something much bigger, a chain of love and protection that would spread far beyond their own lives. 2 years after the foundation was created, an unexpected event brought a discovery that would change everything for the last time. The girl, now 7 years old, was organizing old files from the foundation when she found a folder that had been forgotten in a closet. "Papa, there's a folder here with Mom's name on it," she said, carrying the document to the library where the millionaire was working. Inside the folder were photographs that neither of them had seen before, personal documents from the girl's mother, and a sealed letter addressed, "To my daughter when she is safe and happy." "I think it's time to open it," said the millionaire gently. The letter revealed the last twist of the story, one that neither of them could have imagined. The girl's mother had discovered, during her investigations into the criminal organization, that the millionaire was not just a random victim of the criminals. "My dear daughter," read the letter, "if you are reading this with the good man that I hope you have found, there is something you need to know. He's not just someone who saved you. You saved each other because it was meant to be that way from the beginning." The letter continued explaining that the girl's mother had briefly worked for the millionaire's company years before he was born, when she was still an assistant to his father. She had kept records of how his family had always been generous with employees in need. "When I discovered the criminals' plans against him, I knew that our destinies were connected. I couldn't save him directly, but I knew you could." There was more. The mother revealed that she had deliberately chosen to live near the mansion in the last months of her life, hoping that one day her daughter and the millionaire would meet. She had even taught the girl to recognize signs of genuine kindness in people. "Everything was planned by Mom," whispered the girl, with tears in her eyes. "She knew that you needed me as much as I needed you." The millionaire felt an overwhelming emotion. "Your mother gave us the greatest gift that two wounded hearts could receive: each other." On the last page of the letter, there were instructions to one last hiding place on the rural farm. When they went to investigate, they found a buried chest containing more evidence, but mostly mementos. Photos of the millionaire as a child helping at charity events for the family company, newspaper clippings about his philanthropic achievements, and detailed notes about his kind personality. "She spent years studying you," said the housekeeper, moved to see the documents, "looking for the perfect father for her daughter." The second major twist was completed when they discovered the last document in the chest, an additional will, where the mother left specific instructions for her daughter to be raised by the man of pure heart who lives in the yellow mansion, for he has the soul of a true protector. "Even before we knew each other, she had already chosen you to be my papa," said the girl, hugging the millionaire. That night, they organized a special ceremony in the mansion's garden. They invited all the families who had been united through the foundation, all the employees who had become family, and even the federal agent who had helped them. "Today we celebrate not only our family," said the millionaire during the ceremony, "but the love of a mother who, even leaving, continued to care for her daughter through every good person she placed in our path." The girl, now speaking with eloquence that impressed everyone, made her own speech. "Mom taught me that true love never ends. It continues through every person we choose to love, and who chooses to love us back." The housekeeper revealed her own surprise during the party. "I also have a confession. When you met, I immediately called to check his background. I discovered that he had silently donated to orphanages for years. I knew at that moment that the girl was in the right hands." The accountant added, "And I discovered that he never used his Down syndrome as an excuse not to help others. He was always generous, even when his own family underestimated him." As the party continued, the girl pulled the millionaire to a quiet corner of the garden. "Papa, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course, my daughter." "Sometimes when I'm playing alone, I feel like Mom is watching me and smiling. I think she's happy because we finally have a complete family." "I feel the same way," he admitted. "And I think she's also proud to see how you've become a girl who helps other children to find their families." That night, before going to sleep, the girl made her last drawing in the series that had begun when she was a traumatized and mute child. This time she drew two figures in the sky, her mother and the millionaire's father, watching with approval a happy family that was constantly growing, surrounded by dozens of other families who had found love through the foundation. "Now our story is complete," she said, showing the drawing to the millionaire. "No," he replied, smiling, "now our story is just really beginning." And as the girl fell asleep peacefully, the millionaire knew that all the difficulties, all the fears, all the pain they had faced had a greater purpose: to create a family based on unconditional love and the understanding that sometimes the most unlikely people are exactly what we need to heal. 5 years had passed since that fateful afternoon when a starving girl saved a wounded millionaire. Now, at 12 years old, she had become an eloquent and confident young woman, president of her school's student council and leader of several social projects that she had created herself. The millionaire, now 35 years old, had completely transformed himself. His Down syndrome, which once was seen as a limitation, had become his greatest strength, allowing him to understand and help people who were also considered different by society. His company had expanded internationally, but always maintaining the focus on ethical investments and projects that benefited vulnerable communities. The foundation they created together had already reunited more than 200 families around the world. Orphan children, single parents, non-conventional families, all finding each other through the philosophy that a 4-year-old girl had taught. Different people take better care of each other. On that special spring morning, they were preparing for an event that would mark the perfect ending to their journey: the inauguration of the House of Hope, a residential complex where families in formation could live temporarily while finalizing adoption processes. "Papa," said the girl, now an articulate young woman, "are you nervous about today's speech?" A little, he admitted. It's the first event where I'm going to speak publicly about our whole story. Remember when I couldn't say anything? And now, I'm going to introduce you to 1,000 people, she said, smiling. If we could get this far, you can do anything. The ceremony took place in the garden of the rural farm that had once been just a symbol of the criminal's greed, now transformed into an oasis of hope. Hundreds of families who had been united through the foundation were present, along with authorities, journalists and representatives from social organizations around the world. The housekeeper, now officially grandma to dozens of children adopted through the foundation, was the first to speak. 5 years ago, I was a bitter woman who had lost her own daughter. Today, I am the grandmother of a family that spans continents. This is the power of unconditional love. The former accountant, now the foundation's financial director, presented impressive numbers. Millions of dollars in social investments, hundreds of children in loving homes, dozens of partner companies creating jobs for adoptive parents. But it was when the young woman stood up to introduce her father that the true miracle was revealed. The third and last major twist of the story was about to happen. 5 years ago, she began, her clear voice echoing through the speakers, a starving girl and a wounded millionaire met by chance, or at least that's what we thought for a long time. She paused, looking at the millionaire with a mysterious smile. But we discovered something even more incredible. The meeting was not only the work of my mother. It was the work of 2 people who dedicated their entire lives to preparing this moment. The young woman then revealed the most surprising discovery of all. In the files they had recently found, they discovered that the millionaire's father, years before passing, had left specific instructions in his will for part of the inheritance to be used to help the daughter of the most dedicated employee our company has ever had, referring exactly to the girl's mother. Our parents planned our family before we were even born, she said, with tears of joy in her eyes. They knew that 2 wounded people could heal each other and transform that healing into hope for the world. The millionaire stood up, visibly moved. During his speech, he revealed how the girl had not only saved his life physically, but had taught him that his Down syndrome was not a limitation. It was a unique perspective that made him capable of seeing kindness where others saw only difference. She taught me that family isn't about perfection, he said. It's about choosing to love someone every day, especially on the difficult days. It's about turning our pain into purpose and our love into action. The young woman took the microphone again for the final moment. 5 years ago, I was a girl who couldn't speak because the world had been too cruel. Today, I use my voice to help other children find theirs. 5 years ago, my papa thought he was inferior for being different. Today, he leads a worldwide revolution of non-conventional families. She looked directly at him. Papa, thank you for teaching me that being different isn't being less. It's being exactly what the world needs. The millionaire hugged her on stage, in front of hundreds of people who were applauding, many crying openly. At that moment, he knew that he had found not only a daughter, but his life's purpose. As father and daughter embraced on stage, a gentle breeze swayed the trees around them, as if 2 celestial presences were applauding too. The girl whispered in her father's ear, "Do you feel that? Mom and your dad are here with us." "I do," he replied. "And I think they're saying we did a good job." That night, at the mansion that had become a true home, father and daughter sat in the garden where everything had begun. The young woman, now almost as tall as him, drew one last image in her special notebook. 2 figures holding hands, surrounded by hundreds of other happy families, all connected by golden threads that stretched to the stars. "Is our story over?" she asked. "No," replied the millionaire, smiling as he watched the stars. "Our story will never end. Every family we help to form, every child who finds a home, every person who learns that being different is a gift, all of them are new chapters in our story. And so, Under the starry sky of the city that had watched them grow from wounded strangers into a powerful family, the pure-hearted millionaire and his extraordinary daughter continued to write a story of love that would spread throughout the world, proving that sometimes the most beautiful endings are just new beginnings in disguise. If you liked this wonderful story, please comment, giving a rating from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important. And if you love beautiful stories, subscribe to my channel. I promise to make your day better with my videos.